Lincoln City Radio, community radio for the City of Lincoln on 103.6 FM.
It's 9 minutes past 11. Good morning. How are you this morning? It's a bit windy out there. I know. Can't do much about that, but stay tuned. Big thank you, first of all, to Tony Wilkins for the last 3.5 hours, getting Lincoln up and going. And we've just heard Dave and Ansel Collins. Now we're going to move on and talk about something that's being talked a lot about here in the city at the moment. The Usher Art Gallery, built, of course, back in the 1920s. Owned by the City Council, because it was bequeathed to the City Council, but run by the County Council. And there is a campaign going on at the moment because the Council, and this is the County Council, want to change its use, suggesting it could become a wedding venue or a base for local registration and celebration services, maybe even the new home for hatches, matches and dispatches. And I've got with me in the studio Fiona Hodges from an organisation that calls themselves SLUG. That sounds good. Good morning, Fiona.
Good morning.
SLUG. Go on then. Why SLUG?
Well, it stands for Save Lincolnshire's Usher Gallery. And it is Lincolnshire's Usher Gallery, not just Lincoln's. I think that's very important to stress. This isn't just a Lincoln issue. There are people who come from way outside of Lincoln who also enjoy the gallery. That would include people from around the world who visit Lincoln as well. But the council say that the number of visitors coming to the Usher Gallery is really not sustainable. It's only about 20,000 a year. So is it sensible to keep it open for such a small number of people? I think the question is, that's just a raw figure. The question is why 20,000 and what can be done to increase the numbers. Also, the council in their proposals are talking about microsites and supersites. They're suggesting that the Usher Gallery is a microsite, yet it is managed alongside the collection, which surely would then suggest it is more of a supersite. They look at the figures for the Usher as opposed to the figures for the collection, but they don't necessarily look into the reasons why the Usher might have fewer visitors. Some of the reasons could well be that they're including the figures at the collection for people who are visiting the cafe but not going into the rest of the museum. People maybe just using the toilets, visiting the soft play area, that kind of thing. So I think it's not right to compare apples with pears. I was going to say, are you suggesting that the council are trying to compare apples with pears using the collection and the Usher as an older building and a modern building? But possibly. Well, we're trying to establish how those figures are collected and what they are actually looking at, but we've not been able to get that information. There's also the issue that we believe that in recent years, the investment and marketing into the Usher Gallery hasn't been as good as it could be. With more marketing and more things put on there, it could end up getting a lot more people in. The council talks about financial reasons for needing to do this, but we, as SLUG, would like to put forward options for increasing the revenue into the Usher for it. Sorry. But the council has to make savings. We know that the money they have is getting less and less from central government. We know that unless they were, say, to massively increase council tax, there's no other way of them making money, unless, of course, you want to charge people to go into the Usher Gallery. They're talking that it costs an extra £100,000 a year to run the Usher alongside the collection. They are then talking about needing up to £5 million to extend the collection in order to take some of the art from the Usher. We don't know what's going to happen to the rest. So 100,000 versus up to 5 million. They do say that they themselves will put in about £1 million, and then they will look for external funding for the the other 2 to 4 million that they might need. So there seems to be money available to do that. A lot less money invested in decent marketing and also dealing with some of the display issues at the Usher Gallery could end up with the Usher Gallery being turned round.
But if they're talking about perhaps moving some of the pictures or the artworks to the collection, and then you're saying, well, what could happen to the rest? Could the rest not? Because as you said, it's a Lincolnshire facility. Why couldn't they then take some of them and other items and put them in Grantham, in Boston, in Sleaford, in Skegness, so that people in that part of the county get to see them rather than have to try and come into Lincoln?
I'm not really sure where they would put them, as there's no art gallery in Grantham. There's no art gallery in Boston. There's no art gallery in Skegness.
But does it have to be in an art gallery? I mean, this is the 21st century. Why do you have to hang paintings or busts or whatever it is in an art gallery? Why could they not, the council, not put them in public buildings that people are going in, so that, you know, if you're going to the council to pay a bill or you're going to register something, that you'd see that painting every day as you went in?
There is the issue of accreditation and insurance. They suggest that the security in the Usher Gallery is not suitable, although we have questions about that, as it's never failed a government indemnity scheme accreditation. If they are going to be putting valuable artworks in council buildings elsewhere, they would then need to up their security in those buildings. I think that also there is the issue that it's the breaking up of the Usher collection. James Ward Usher left his collection to the city to be shown together. So there may be a question mark over whether they will be able to split the collection up.
So the collection, and you're right, James Usher did leave it to the city, and the Usher Art Gallery building belongs to the city. But it's the county council. If the county council walks away completely, the city council presumably has to pick up the tab. They can't afford that, can they?
I don't know. I don't work for the city council. It's probably likely that there would be a financial issue there. Yes, definitely. And that's why the not just the SLUG group, but other artist organisations and other groups within the city and the county would like to have an opportunity to have a dialogue with both the councils, the city and the county council, to see what other alternatives there can be to rejuvenate and reinvigorate the Usher Gallery, so that, you know, this doesn't have to happen.
Well, let's take a break for some music, and then we'll talk about some of the ideas that you might want to come up with as how you could keep the Usher open. Because the thoughts going through my head is the county council got to make a saving, and the only other way to make it pay would be to charge people. But we'll talk about that in a moment after Marianne Faithfull. Marianne Faithfull, come and stay with me. It sounds like a good invitation here. This is Lincoln City Radio, 103.6 FM, through noon. I've just had you may have seen the little videoette that I put on each day. A message come in, because I said we were going to do a surf and turf today. Fish fingers and bacon butties then, says somebody. No, not at all. I have with me in the studio Fiona Hodges. We're talking about the Usher Art Gallery. See, Fiona's from SLUG. Just tell them what SLUG stands for again, because
that's Save Lincolnshire's Usher Gallery.
Now, we're talking before about the reasons to keep it open, but finance is the reason the county council, are looking to close, to change the venue. How would you then keep it open? Because we talk about it. You said if Lincoln City Football Club was in trouble, you would join a campaign to support to keep them going. We did. We had it. We bought a seat years ago. The drill hall are asking you to buy a brick. Are you asking people to buy a piece of art or something then, or sponsor a piece of art at the gallery?
Well, SLUG doesn't actually run the gallery, so we're not in a position to ask people to do that sort of thing at the moment. But as I said earlier, we would like to have the opportunity for arts organisations within the county, not necessarily SLUG, but arts organisations within the county and other interested parties, to have a dialogue with both the city and the county councils to look at ways to keep the Usher going as a viable art gallery. And we believe that with some efforts, some creative management, some marketing, and possibly also an updated model of ownership, perhaps putting it into some sort of charitable trust, that will help. But obviously there needs to be ways of raising money. So we don't object to there being paid-for exhibitions. They've had paid-for exhibitions there in the past. The National Portrait Award exhibition, I think in 2016, was a paid-for exhibition. To go to that part of the gallery to see the exhibition, you had to pay an entry fee, and that's the way that quite a lot of galleries now, they have a certain part of the collection that they have that is free to enter, and then they have often touring exhibitions that come along that you pay for. At the moment, the Museum of the Moon that's going on in the collection is, I think, pay as you feel. So they haven't actually charged a specific entry fee, but people are asked to pay as they feel, depending on how much they want to pay and how much they can afford to pay. There is the option in the Usher to do more of those paid-for exhibitions. There's also the option of doing more corporate events. For example, renting a part of the gallery out for evening corporate events. A lot of galleries and museums do that sort of thing these days.
So if you were to take what is currently owned by the city, put it into a charitable trust of some sort. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking like the V&A in London. You said that it has visiting exhibitions. I've been a number of times to the V&A. In fact, more times to the V&A in the last few years than to the Usher Art Gallery, because they've got these exhibitions and you pay to go in. Mm-hmm. What sort of exhibitions do you think are going to draw people to the Usher Art Gallery? Because you go to the V&A, the last one I went to, if I remember right, it was the Pink Floyd one, and it was packed. I think it was Bowie before that, it was something else before that, I forget which one. You're not going to get those sorts of exhibitions at the Art Gallery here in Lincoln. So how are you going to have something that's sufficiently of a draw to get people to come in and part with 10, 15, 20 pounds?
Personally, I don't know, because I'm just one person, in this whole campaign. But we do have a group of people working together to come up with ideas. People who've got an awful lot more experience in the art world, in the events world than I do. And so I'm sure we've got some creative imaginations out there that can give some ideas as to what sort of exhibitions, events, and other activities can be run to bring money into the Usher Gallery.
So your suggestion that you're hoping the council might pick up with is let the gallery stay open as an art gallery, but in a charitable trust format. And then make it self-funding. What if it then fails? What if it collapses completely financially and the charitable trust is forced to say, we're going to pull out? What would you do with it then?
Again, I don't know. I mean, these are just options that I think need to be explored, rather than closing it down and turning it into a coroner's court, registrars, whatever. Because once that happens, that will be the end of the Usher building as an art gallery. As a fully functioning art gallery anyway. So I think at this point there is a consultation going on, and I think that's an opportunity for lots of other people to provide their ideas to the council as to how to save the gallery, should they wish to save the gallery. I am concerned that the council have said that they want to make a decision of some sort, and I think a meeting of the 8th of May. What that decision is going to look like, I don't know. Is that at that point that they're going to decide, yes, that's it, we're going ahead with our plans? Or at that point, are they going to say, well, the strength of public opinion has been to look at opportunities to save it, so we're going to actually that will be the next thing we're going to do. So at this point, we just need to get more people aware of the plans, ask them to visit the council's website to take part in the consultation, and also to write to their representatives on the county council, the city council, if they live outside of the boundaries of Lincoln, their own district councillors and their MPs, to express their concerns and maybe some ideas that they might have as to how things could be, how the Usher could be saved.
So in a sense, you're asking, you're putting out a bit of a clarion call here for people to support you and what a SLUG are trying to put forward.
Yes, because we don't have all the answers and we definitely don't have all the ideas, but what the council are doing is a consultation, so consult with them is what we're saying.
Just remind people, how can they how can they put their views forward in the consultation?
The Lincolnshire County Council website has the consultation on there. The SLUG website, which is slugcampaign.co.uk, has links to the consultation. There's also a petition that Jane Riley started, and there's links from the SLUG campaign website to that, which is currently, I think, at about 2,700 signatures. Jane started that around the time I was sort of looking for a campaign group for SLUG, and decided to start it myself. And we're now sort of working together as well. So, there are various ways that people can express their views on the consultation.
Fiona, thank you very much for coming in. We wish you well with your campaign, and we'll wait and see what the council decide to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mungo Jerry there, and open up. And if you want to get in touch with Fiona and SLUG, they've got a website. I can't find it. I've been looking. Keeps taking me to SLUG and Lettuce, which, if I remember right, is a pub. So that doesn't help, does it, Graham?
No, David, no.
Got Graham Nicholls in, who is, of course, as you well know, Lincoln City Radio's famous roving reporter. But you've been on the telephone to somebody.
Yes. I've not roving this morning. I've been sitting in the office, and I've just taken a call from Lorna from Skellingthorpe.
Good morning, Lorna.
Who phoned in to comment on the interview you've just had.
Oh, dear.
Particularly in relation to her memories of the Usher Gallery, going back 20 years or so when her children were younger, and what a lively place it was at that time, and how there were lots of activities on for children and also for adults. She remembers having music concerts in there and Saturday morning activities for children. She feels that the Usher's been neglected in recent years, and in a sense it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't put things on, people won't come, and when people don't come, then it becomes open to closure. She knows, of course, a lot of things that used to happen at the Usher are now based down at the drill hall, which has changed in its function clearly. She remembers wrestling at the drill hall.
I remember those days, yes.
Sadly, no longer on, I don't think, at the drill hall.
Perhaps I suppose if somebody was to say they wanted to put wrestling on, they could do it, but I don't envisage it would go down
we'll
quite.
Ask Gavin next time.
Oh, that'd be a good one, wouldn't it?
Wrestling on. But anyway, but that an indication of how the drill hall has changed, and maybe it is a function of the change of venues and different uses of venues. But Lorna's quite clear that she thinks that if it was better used, better advertised, and had more things on, then it could have a continuing life as part of the city's
I think Lorna's got a very good point there, Graham, because I'm just looking at a floor plan of the Usher Art Gallery as we speak, and I mean they've got two big rooms downstairs, they've got two big rooms upstairs, they've got the two smaller rooms upstairs as well as, and then downstairs they've got two smaller rooms and like two ante-rooms as well. And I suppose if you think about it, they could put on in one of those rooms on a fairly regular basis something to draw the crowds in. And I think this was a point that Fiona was making, that maybe that's the lacking bit. But if you then click on to the collection, they've got the same sort of thing. They've got the interactive stuff there. So is it that one has to ask the question, maybe we can get Nick Worth to come in and tell us, is this a case of that the county council, because they're the people responsible, have sort of shifted their focus away from the 20th century buildings and are saying, well, actually, we're going to go more 21st century, interactive, let the children put their sticky fingers over things and we'll clean it up afterwards, which you perhaps wouldn't want them doing at the Usher Art Gallery.
Well, it is different functions and different types of collection. That's absolutely true. And clearly it's a rock and a hard place for the council, I think. I mean, they are facing very substantial cuts.
Oh, I would fully understand that.
So making best use of the space that's at their disposal. But it is the classic problem of how you need to invest to save. And the question is whether, and certainly the question posed by Lorna is, if you put things in, you'll get product out, and you'll get people coming into the gallery who will spend money, in the cafe and doing those kind of things. It's a difficult argument, but the council is clearly trying to move away from the old model of subsidised museums and art galleries towards a model which is saying, no, these are cultural industries that have got to pay their way. And we can't provide the level of background subsidy that we've done in past years. It's going to have to be a different model. So this notion of cultural industries working together in what will probably, from the council point of view, clearly for their plan is to streamline the space available. I'm not arguing for that. I'm saying I think that's the council's line, but you're right, we'll try and get Councillor Worth as the lead councillor in to talk to us.
It is an interesting debate that you could have here, because I'm just thinking you've got something like the Peter DeWint collection. The city owns probably most, if not all
it's
of
a very significant collection.
It's a significant collection from somebody who lived from 1784 to 1849. So we're not even talking in the last century or even 2 centuries ago. So some people might say, the youth of today might say, so what's special about his picture of, a hayfield,
yes,
or, the harvest being brought in? We've got Constable's Hayway, we've got this. So why should we worry about that one? And I think that's a question that somebody somewhere needs to sort of to argue.
It is the brutal truth, and of course James Usher's collection of silverware, making that into an interesting, dynamic, modern exhibit is a challenge. I have to say the work that I've seen at the Usher and at the collection has been really good at bringing sort of more traditional parts of their collection into a modern exhibition and putting it into some kind of modern context. Some of the things they've done have been really excellent, I think, at the collection. Looking at a single piece of art, one of the DeWints were a good example, and putting that alongside modern artists doing the same kind of work but in a very different kind of way. That's the way to do it, I think, to use the resources and vast kind of materials that they've got in a way which makes them more relevant to new audiences and getting new people in. I think children still have great interest in art, in producing art themselves and in looking at other people's art.
Oh, very much. I mean, my granddaughter drew a picture this morning of me. And but it's one of those. I should treasure it forever, but I don't think anybody else in Lincoln would care to.
No doubt on its way to the National Portrait Gallery already.
But actually, you talk about this. Grayson Perry, we've got a Grayson Perry vase in the Usher.
Yes, we have.
So is there something about maybe the council should be looking to try and persuade someone like Grayson Perry to come along to the gallery so that, 100, 200, 500 people might just come along and hear him talk about... Because, he's somebody who will draw crowds.
He is, but as a one-off, and I think the issue...
There must be lots of one-offs we could do.
There's an analogy perhaps with Lincoln City Football Club. Lincoln City Football Club survived on crowds of 2,000 or 3,000 for years when they were first relegated,
or even hundreds.
And now they've hit a rich vein of form. They've built a ready audience that go week after week after week. Sometimes the games are good, sometimes they're bad, but people are loyal and go and do them. Now that's the kind of thing you have to do just in the arts, just as much as you do with sport.
That I totally agree with. But then the next argument you would follow that one on with is this city seems to be heading more towards a youth culture now, with all the work the university's doing. Would they be driven to somewhere like the Usher to the same extent that people of our generation, and both you and I are retired now, Graham, might just go, actually, I quite like the idea of sitting for an hour in a beautiful building looking at paintings. The youth today, their mindset is completely different.
It may be that's the case. I think young people also like to reflect. They probably don't have much
not
chance
in the
to do
same
that.
numbers as you and I don't think.
Maybe not. But but the other thing is, of course, then it does come back to the brutality of the figures. That the Usher, as you've pointed out, has an enormous floor space, and if you, in the way of modern business, if you convert that into revenue per square metre, it's a pretty hard task to make that.
But they've got the whole of upstairs, which they could turn into something. Now, the difficulty, of course, is you can't really knock the walls down because it's a listed building. Yeah. But, you upstairs at the moment, they've got, a couple of temporary exhibition spaces, an empty room, and the Grace and Perry vase. And it is about how do you maximise the use. Yes. I mean, one of the arguments, Fiona herself said it, she's talking about artists, but what she didn't say was whether they are visual artists. Could we turn it into auditory art? Should we be looking at sound and things up there, which might just draw in a different audience?
Well, all of those things I think are entirely possible, and I'm sure among the artistic side of the operations, I think those must be things they're looking at. I think. Yeah, we'll try and get Councillor Worth in, or
it would
somebody
be really nice
from the council.
But I think it'd be nice because we're not going to pax. We're not looking to paxman them. We want them to share their thoughts and their ideas and why they think that the way they're going forward is going to make it a better facility, because that's what the city are asking for and the county are asking for, are the best facilities, so that, as Fiona rightly points out, it draws in people from around the country.
Well, the encouraging thing is that although the context is the unhappy one of having to talk about closures, but the fact that so many people are talking about it, the fact that it's raised so much interest and animation, must be good, must be good for the cultural life of the city.
But it sits in a part of the city, you could argue, the one part of the city that has not yet been modernised. It's that little tranche that goes up through sort of Steep Hill, Bailgate, the cathedral, the castle, and it's at the bottom of that. You come down the Danes Gate and that area. So you've got that route that people can either be the energetic and start at the Usher and work up, or they can be less energetic, start at the castle and the cathedral and work down.
Well, it's certainly on the trail, isn't it?
Yeah, and, very much so.
But again, there are cultural facilities springing up all over Lincoln, and I've done a recording this week, which is I think been played out a couple of times, about Mansions of the Future, which is the new arts project down by the station. So again, we're looking to move people around into different parts of the city, and in everywhere you look, there is something interesting going on. And hopefully, there's the scope to do something that does include the Usher in the future, but we'll have to wait and see.
Nice. It's a beautiful, imposing building. Everybody sees it every day. Whether you go up and down Lindham Hill, you can't miss it. And it will be a real shame, I think, if we lose it as a place that people can use as relaxation and rest, and because that is important in our lives. If it just becomes a business centre, but we recognise the council have got to balance the books somehow, and if our taxes aren't coming back, then maybe they're going to have to change the way. I'll leave it with you, Graham, to see if we can get hold of Nick Worth.
We'll have a go.
In the meantime, here's Bobby.